Coming up, Targeting Target will examine how a protest from one Metro Atlanta church has now ballooned into a national movement over the store's change in its DEI practices. Also, the Sean Combs sex trafficking trial resumes after the Memorial Day holiday. We're going to bring in our legal expert to dissect what's taken place 2 weeks in and what we can expect in the coming days, and find out why thousands of women are now claiming that toxic chemicals in hair relaxers have been giving them cancer. This is The Take. This is The Take. I'm Cheryl Preheim in for Chesley McNeil. This morning we'll go behind the headlines and look at why and how stories are impacting your community. Experts will share what they've known and what we'll have a little fun as we go too. But weather really a big story of your day. So let's take a look at your 7-day forecast to start us off here. We have a weather impact alert for your Tuesday. We're starting the day with rain, wind, and clouds. Our weather impact team's watching a chance of severe weather this afternoon into this evening. This is round 5 of storms if you're counting, and it's bringing some cooler temperatures with it. Some cases starting the day off in the 60s. We'll have a look at the rest of the week a little bit later. You can keep track of tonight's storms right here on 11Alive Plus. Starting at 7 p.m., our weather impact team will be live at the top and the bottom of each half hour. And if needed, we'll bring you continuous coverage until that threat of severe weather has passed. We start with Target protests over the holiday weekend. Pastor Jamal Bryant of New Birth Missionary Baptist Church continued his call for a nationwide boycott of Target stores. This specific demonstration taking place Sunday in Conyers. He is protesting the corporation's decision in January to roll back its diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. In recent days, Target reported a 3% drop in first quarter sales, citing both tariff uncertainty and boycott pressure. Pastor Bryant's protest was also meant to mark 5 years since the murder of George Floyd, the Minneapolis man who died while in police custody.
Those in authority can only do what people allow them to do. And so I think it's not until America clears its throat and voices and registers its objection to what's taking place that we're going to see more of it take place.
A Target spokesperson sent 11Alive a statement in response to Pastor Bryant's latest demonstration, saying in part, Target is absolutely dedicated to fostering inclusivity for everyone, our team members, our guests, and our supply partners. Today, we are proud of the progress we've made since 2020 and believe it has allowed us to better serve the needs of our customers. We had originally scheduled Pastor Bryant to be on with us this show this morning, but we were told over the weekend he'd be unavailable to appear. But we're happy to be joined by Rev Vince from New Birth Missionary Baptist Church. Welcome, Reverend. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having us.
So part of Target's message says the company has pledged a lot of money, $2 billion to support Black-owned businesses after George Floyd's death, but has since rolled back its DEI initiatives. So what is the message that it's sending to communities of color?
So when you see the rolling back of a promise that's made, it's really sending the message that we were only doing this for fashion. But the reality of it is it wasn't the fabric of what the company stood as their values. And now you're seeing the ramifications of that.
Pastor Bryant's really emphasized the spiritual dimension of this boycott, aligning it with Lent, calling it that Target fast. How does faith and activism play such an important role in this growing movement? And what role does spirituality play, do you feel, especially moving forward?
Incredible question. Dr. Bryant, when he went forth in his prayer when we were preparing for Lent, what he wanted to make sure was that we grounded this in our principles of our faith. So you will see that this is actually the first movement since the Civil Rights Movement in which it is literally led by the Black church again. So we didn't start with the language of boycotting, but we started with 40 days of prayer and fasting. So we fasted from Target in hopes that in our prayer, in our grievances, that Target would change, we'll have conversations, and now you have shifted from this prayer and preparation through Lent, but now we've shifted to a full-fledged boycott led by Dr. Bryant.
So interesting. I just thought of Ebenezer Baptist Church as you're talking about that, and the church now launching this movement that has clearly had an impact already. We mentioned that Target CEO has said that the protests have already impacted the company's bottom line. Is your feeling that hitting that bottom line, really making that money impact, is the only way things would really change moving forward?
The truth of the matter is, it is. You think about what happened. Again, I go back to the busboy boycott, which actually lasted over a year. And it was the economic ramifications of that boycott that brought all parties to the table. So for us, we're not interested in just standing outside and marching, but what we want to do is now impact their dollars. And we've seen this right now when the CEO talks about his compensation has dropped nearly 45%. We've seen now the losing of the shares. And this is what boycotting is. It's important because it highlights the power of the consumer activism, right? It also shows that it forces companies to decide whether they'll stand firm in their values or retreat to pressure. So, the only way you have these kind of conversations, when you talk about the black church and folks figuring out where's the black church, we had to do it by impacting directly the shareholders. And we're seeing these conversations now.
And some of the conversations include the potential that some job losses might be a consequence here, maybe leading to hundreds of jobs being cut. Do you see that as a necessary consequence for the overall goal?
Yeah, you asked a critical question about what is faith, the importance of faith in all of this. For us as Christian believers, we look at the ultimate faith. For God so loved the world that he gave up, he sacrificed his only begotten son. So when you move on for this walk that we're walking, we all understand that there are sacrifices that had to be made for the greater goal. And unfortunately, there are a few sacrifices that will be made, but we believe on the other side of this, folks are going to be blessed because of the fights led nationwide by folks who are coming together.
You mentioned the greater goal, far beyond Target here. What broader strategies maybe are being considered to ensure that corporate accountability across the board and sustained support for diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are part of the future?
Yeah, one of the things I have to commend Dr. Bryant on, he's been strategic about this entire thing. So one of the things I want to say, we talked about, yes, the losses and the impact that it's had, but what he wanted to make sure is that as we're boycotting and fasting, to make sure that those black businesses who were in Target, those black businesses around the world, that they were supported. So on June 21st, June 22nd, we're having our second rendition of the Bullseye Black Market, which we're having over 100 vendors across the country, many Target vendors as well. They're coming in. They're going to be able to have their businesses here at Target. But also, the impact of this that we look forward is every week, every Sunday, Dr. Bryant always releases a new plan regarding this movement. So as I state, that Ebenezer what's a place that folks had their ear to, even Dexter, because they want to see what was the strategies. The same thing is happening each Sunday. All
right, well, a lot ahead. Reverend Vince Van from New Birth Missionary Baptist Church, we really appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
More of The Take in just a moment. Welcome back to The Take. President Trump's fiery new comments on Vladimir Putin's a stark turn in U.S.-Russian relations as tensions escalate over Russia's ongoing assault on Ukraine. Joining us now from Washington, NBC's Bianca Fushini, pinch hitting for Alice Barr for us today. What can we make of this rapid shift in tone from President Trump towards Putin just days after their reportedly very good phone call? Do we think the comments reflect a policy change, or is this maybe just personal frustration?
Hey, good morning. It's sort of unclear what may have changed in that short period of time. I mean, reminder, it was just last week that President Trump said his call went very well with Putin regarding a peace deal with Ukraine. But it's not the first time that Trump is seemingly souring on Putin after having a pretty solid relationship with him since the start of his first term in office. So it really could signal that the White House's relationship with the Kremlin could be changing. But right now, it also seems that it is more personal, simply because we have yet to see an actual change in the administration's policy on Russia. And Trump does still seem pretty keen on reaching a deal. But again, this is the first time we're really seeing Trump and the Kremlin talk back and forth about each other in this sort of way. So it could mean down the road that their relationship looks different. Maybe it starts to deteriorate. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, that frustration, that different tone really happening at the same time as some pretty intense airstrikes from Russia towards Ukraine. And then there's Ukraine. Any reaction to President Trump's laying criticism on really both President Putin and President Zelensky in the same breath?
So what we're seeing here in Washington is lawmakers on both sides of the aisle really coming together in support of Ukraine, especially after the attacks that we saw this weekend. It's really one of the few issues left here in D.C. where both sides of the aisle can ultimately see eye to eye. I mean, to some extent, of course. But there really is growing support for this bipartisan bill that is in the Senate. So it will be interesting to see what happens with it and if it's able to succeed, because, of course, it doesn't necessarily matter what happens on Capitol Hill. It might not change anything within the Trump administration and the White House. But we are, just within the past couple days, particularly among the GOP, we're seeing ardent support for, backing Ukraine in this conflict, considering what's happened over simply the past few days.
Before we let you go, Bianca, how much do you think that these statements aimed at Putin and Zelensky muddy U.S. diplomatic efforts to unify the West behind Ukraine?
Well, our allies in the West, if you think, mainly in Europe, for example, they're probably pretty relieved to hear that Trump is being critical of Putin. I think one thing to watch for, not necessarily regarding the West, but one thing to watch for would be the U.S. relationship with China, considering China is accused by Ukraine of giving Russia weapons, a claim that China denies, but that's something that could also affect the U.S., but of course in a different way.
Yeah, a delicate balance in so many ways. Bianca Fushini, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it. Recapping last week's top moments in the Sean Combs sex trafficking trial, rapper Kid Cudi testified that in 2011, Combs allegedly broke into his home and later orchestrated the firebombing of his Porsche using a Molotov cocktail. During his testimony, Cudi likened Combs to a Marvel supervillain. There was also evidence presented by a Homeland Security agent from a raid last year on Combs's Miami home. This included disassembled AR-15 rifle parts and illicit drugs. Joining us now, legal expert Daryl Cohen, a former assistant Fulton County District Attorney and now serves as a Metro Atlanta-based defense lawyer. Always good to see you, Daryl.
Good morning. How are you? Happy Monday and Tuesday, all wrapped into one.
Yeah, hope you had a good holiday weekend. We always appreciate you helping us to analyze this high-profile case. It seems like the prosecution's plan is just to keep ratcheting up the shock with the witness testimony and the evidence being offered here.
Well, absolutely. They are trying to show that this was not a one-off. It was not a one-time only, that everything that Sean Puff Daddy Combs did was piece by piece by piece, and he never let it go. Think of Harvey Weinstein and multiply it. Think of the film business and all of the bad publicity it gets. Everything goes in the entertainment business as far as records are concerned. This is beyond the pale.
Yeah, you kind of see this plan to maybe repulse the jury so much that it influences that guilty verdict that could potentially come down. We're told that part of this week's moves by the prosecution will be to call a former employee of Combs, Capricorn Clark, who could provide some more insights into the artist's alleged abusive behaviors. Talk more about that.
Well, what the prosecution, the federal government is trying to do in this case is to show that this is just not one person, one time only. It wasn't just between Sean Puff Daddy and Cassie. It was between everybody that he interacted with, everybody he dealt with, that he had a pattern of intimidation, a pattern of threats, And most of the time, it appears that those threats became promises that were carried out. So as long as a prosecution can show it's not just Cassie, it's not just sex that was consensual that I went over the top. It was all of the various things that the prosecution is showing, and piece by piece. And the defense has got a real problem with this because they have to deflect. It's almost impossible for them to cross-examine these witnesses and make them all a liar. One or two you can always do that with from time to time, but in this instance, you can't take the entire world and make them a liar. So what you try to do is deflect and say, hey, this is the record business. Everything goes. It was normal. It wasn't unusual. It's okay.
Let's talk more about Combs's legal team now, Daryl. We're hearing that they may begin to challenge the prosecution's narrative, possibly questioning the credibility of the witnesses and the admissibility of certain evidence. At this point in the trial, is this more of a last-ditch effort to save Combs?
Absolutely. And I put several different asterisks in front of that and behind it. What the defense has got to do, they're not going to get a not guilty verdict, in my opinion. So what they have to do is they have to show that these witnesses, one by one, are not credible. They had a bone to pick with the defendant, Sean Puff Daddy. They didn't like him. They are going to get mad and they're going to get even. So you never get mad, you get even, and they're getting even. The problem with that is if there was but one witness, maybe two, I got it. I think it could be an effective defense strategy. Because of the number of witnesses and the gravity of their testimony, it is going to be literally impossible for the defense to do that. So what they have to do is mitigate and make it not as bad as it really appears. It's no big deal. This is the record business. Who cares? He didn't hurt anybody. Didn't hurt anybody at all. That has to be some part of their strategy, in my view.
All right, another big week ahead, Daryl. We always appreciate your analysis and perspective as you keep breaking it down for us as we get closer to the end of this court case. Thanks a lot, Daryl.
Take care. Have a great day. Thank you.
You too. All right, you are watching The Take here on 11Alive Plus. Drugstore shelves and beauty salon supply rooms bursting with products promising to straighten, strengthen, smooth, shine, curl, or otherwise tame women's hair. But now thousands of women are filing lawsuits against hair relaxer companies. They claim the chemicals in the products have put their health at risk. Joining us this morning is Alexandra Gross, Senior Policy Counsel of Consumer Reports Sustainability Policy Team. Welcome. Thanks for the time.
Thanks for having me.
So this is a topic that Consumer Reports has poured a lot of time and effort into covering. What specific patterns or trends have you uncovered about which demographic groups are most impacted by the regular use of hair relaxers, and how early usage really typically is such a big component of this?
Yes, I think the crux of the problem that we're facing is that cosmetics and beauty products right now are woefully underregulated. And the fact is that women and people of color are disproportionately exposed to more harmful chemicals because of the frequency of use of these products and also the way that it's marketed toward them, that they need to have straight hair, that they need to have hair a certain way. And consumers remain mostly unaware that toxic chemicals with such severe implications are being stocked on the shelves of their stores. Consumers shouldn't have to worry about these problems. You know, when you go to a store and pick something up, you should be able to see that what you're buying is going to keep you safe. But what we're seeing is women of color particularly and young girls even have these products marketed toward them that contain these terrible carcinogens and heavy metals and other very toxic chemicals that are worse the longer you use them. So if you're starting from the age that a young girl starts to do her hair all the way up to adulthood, they've been using those products for many, many years. And you're seeing endocrine disrupting chemicals that eventually cause cancer, infertility, and other really terrible effects.
You know, you're talking about a lifetime of regular use and really now just starting to peel back what the long-term impacts are here. Were there any particular brands or product lines that you identified as having the highest concentrations of these potentially dangerous chemicals?
Yeah, so what Consumer Reports did is we picked 10 of the most popular synthetic braiding hair products, mostly from Amazon, that is largely where women get these products from. And we tested them for carcinogens, heavy metals, and other chemicals. And what we found was 9 out of the 10 products contained lead. Now, we know there's no safe amount of lead,
right,
especially for children. It can cause developmental delays and disruptions. We also found carcinogens in 10 out of 10 of the products. And we found other volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, as we call them, cancer-causing chemicals in all of the samples.
That is worth repeating. 10 out of 10 showed carcinogens. So the important question then is, what does the data suggest about the health impact of the long-term repeated exposures to these relaxers, especially when they're combined with some other personal care products?
Yeah, I mean, I think what needs to happen is we need to know what we're putting on our bodies and in our hair and on our scalp. The government should be regulating these cosmetics and beauty products more strictly. So we're working on a campaign to get Congress to pass a safer beauty bill package that would ban these toxic chemicals at a federal level. We're also working in the states. Right now I'm working in New York State to pass the Beauty Justice Act, which would ban most of these harmful chemicals, so that when you go to the store and pick something up, you don't have to worry about having long-term exposures to toxins.
Well, a really important conversation that's really just beginning. Thanks for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right. You're watching The Take. We'll have much more in just a moment. Before we go, my final take on the last free bag domino about to fall. Southwest Airlines had long been the champion of the bags fly free, but that all changes tomorrow. So how much is it going to cost you? We just checked Southwest's website. Nothing there yet on the pricing, but NBC reports it'll likely be $35 for the first bag, $45 for the second. Until now, Southwest was the only major U.S. airline that let you check 2 bags for free. That's been a big win for families, for budget travelers, and overpackers who swear they need 5 pairs of shoes for the big weekend getaway. But Southwest says that rising costs like jet fuel prices make free bags a luxury of the past. Cost climbing is something a lot of businesses are facing. But my take, sometimes the obstacle is the opportunity. Southwest is missing an opportunity to stand out as the one that would not bend, would have created a lot of loyalty at a time when people are stretched so thin on everything, from groceries to gasoline to rent to water bills. We should mention that some Southwest passengers will still get to have free bags, but that's only if you're an A-lister or you have Business Select. For everybody else, it's another hit to the bank account. So the bottom line here, pack light, Georgia. As of tomorrow, the era of free luggage is rolling down the jet bridge, and I'll keep carrying my own Ziploc baggies of snacks for me and the kids to save money any way we can. That's it for The Take. Thanks for being with us.